Dude, Chase, thanks for joining the podcast, man.
Of course.
Good to have you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, shout out to Rob, Homemade Spaceship, for connecting us. He's making the magic happen. I love Rob. But yeah, for people who don't know you, I'll just give you a little brief intro if you're cool with that.
Yep.
Chase, you are a Denver-based musician engineer. You've worked in the industry for 15 years as a touring Ableton programmer, synthesizer technician, playback programmer. We were just talking. We have a lot of mutual friends in that world.
For sure.
You traveled, worked with some pretty cool artists, including Rihanna, Tycho, M83, Pretty Lights, Logic. We probably keep going. Currently, you are working as a touring tech for Rüfüs Du Sol. There's a lot we could talk about. You released your album, The Mechanics of Time and Travel. It was really dope. I was listening to that with my dog on the couch yesterday and was really vibing to it.
Nice.
But yeah, man,
It's music for dogs.
it's music for everyone, humans and pets. How's your cat doing?
Great.
Good.
I got 3 of them. They're all just fighting away.
I've only seen 2 on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, there's a third one.
I think like everybody needs like a studio pet.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's really important. It definitely helps me get through. My dog helps me with like that 40,000 hertz range.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you can't hear up there mixing.
Cat's like, oh, maybe cut it at 50K.
Yeah,
It's been a little crispy up there.
a little too crispy. But yeah, for listeners that are unaware, what is really the role of a touring synthesizer technician or a playback programmer? Maybe give a quick rundown of your role and what you do.
They're 2 different jobs, and it depends on who I'm working for, you know, because I would be doing one or the other. But on the Ableton side of things, it would be operating the Ableton session from offstage and often fielding edits or accommodating guests and doing that kind of thing, because the show does have the ability to change night to night. So having somebody around and on board to just make sure that the playback is what it needs to be, and then running the show, yeah, in real time. So back there, start, stop, select song, whatever it happened to be. And as far as the synth tech work, it's maintaining, operating, setting up all keys and all MIDI devices on stage. So I've done a little bit of both. Yeah, quite a bit of both.
Yeah, and recently you consulted with Derek from Pretty Lights and did some of his modular setup, right?
Yeah, I mean, he already had his system built, but it was brought in pre-tour to kind of help optimize a little bit and get things synchronized in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just talking a second ago. Like I nerded out a little bit about the setup with some other people, and it's insane. Like there's a lot going on that stage.
I walked into the rehearsal space, which is part of Derek's studio, and it was like day 1 where I was just kind of being interviewed, and he showed me the whole rig, and I've seen a lot of stuff over the years, but this was kind of next level.
Yeah.
As far as like the tech and how it integrates with one another and works and talks to front of house, like it's just a very specific thing, so they can do their like hybrid electronic music jam band thing.
Yeah.
Very freely.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about that. I don't know how much we can share, but I'd be really curious to learn some of that too. We have mutual friends, like I said, in the playback world. Laura Escade, I learned some playback from her
100%.
in like 2018, I think it was, with her Master Tribe program. She's super cool.
We go way, way, way back.
Yeah, shout out to Laura.
For sure.
Yeah, she's taught me a lot. And she was on the podcast, I think 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
She's great. For anybody who wants to get into some of this and learn, she's got a good program that teaches a lot of
Awesome resource for that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. As far as like some of your work with Rüfüs, I know that you did some touring and some work with them. Any like memorable moments on stage or like doing some of their setup that you'd want to share? And
I don't have any really crazy memories. I mean, we've had like a lot of, it's been fun because I got in at a certain level where their trajectory was just like starting to blow up. I was introduced to the production manager about 3 months after they had played Denver. And I had a friend who was like, you need to come see this band. I was like, I'm not on the road right now. I'm just not going to go see a band right now. And 3 months later, I get a call and it's them. And I tell him I've got this job. He's like, that's who I wanted you to come see.
that's amazing.
So I was like introduced, flew to Australia and just popped into the rehearsals. It's kind of wild, you know? And fortunately, as a playback guy, if it's uneventful, that means you've done your job well. So, I mean, there's been exciting things in terms of like big shows and things like that. I mean, we shot the whole Joshua Tree thing together, and that was like, it's huge to just go out in the middle of the desert and do like a full on like mini concert for no one.
Yeah,
Super rad.
that's awesome.
But again, if I'm doing my job well, you don't know I'm there, and that's best case scenario.
Yeah, man, that's like such a high pressure job as well, because if something goes wrong and you're responsible for it, there's a chance you might never get a call for that job again.
That's true.
You're like, That's true. I just heard many stories like that.
For sure. Man, it's not a secret that people are running playback, but when it goes bad pretty hard. Especially when you have a time-coded show where you've got like video, lasers, and lighting, like everything is following playback. So yeah, we just build redundancy and safety in to make sure that like there's never a show stop.
There was a pretty iconic moment that happens for Lizzo, and her playback and redundant rig went down at Coachella for the debut of her new album tour. And she had to sing, I think, like 70% of the set completely a cappella with her dancers. And I don't think that person's employed anymore.
No, I can't imagine a scenario in which you couldn't get it back in that amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly the logistics of what happened, like technically. But yeah, she wanted an all-female crew, and I was supposed to actually be that person. So I'm thankful I wasn't.
That you were there.
It could have not been, it might not have been the playback tech's fault.
Sure.
You just never know.
Yeah, I was at Coachella a few years earlier, and is a big thing in these digital consoles. And there was a period of time when the Avid consoles were not playing nice waves, and front of house was just gone because their desk had died. And they're all in-ears on stage, and they're just playing, and nobody knows. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Mainstays, bedliner. There's no sound coming out of the PA.
That is.
So there's a lot of variables. It's not always, the playback rig obviously can go down, but I mean, we've had scenarios on Rüfüs where we have a fully redundant 2 sets of Avid consoles because same thing happened to us, and we had to go switch over to the B.
Yeah.
Super quick. And it's all over MADI, and there's like redundancy switching on board. So it happens very quickly. Yeah. But everybody's in a panic at that point.
For people who don't know what MADI is, you want to explain that?
It's a digital audio format similar to ADAT, where it's multi-channel over just a couple of lines. So instead of running 64 cables, we run like 2 digital cables.
Yeah, it's like an Ethernet thing.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah. I'm curious to like hear your thoughts of what you think even the future of playback is going to look like, because I think it's probably evolved quite a bit in the last couple decades of just being a spacebar person in Pro Tools. Sure, now obviously Ableton Live seems to be the standard for running audio and doing playback and redundancy and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing that you'll see is, well, at least in the EDM world, where I'm like, Rüfüs is a hybrid. Like, I mean, we do the playback thing, but they're also doing a lot on stage. And one thing in this kind of build of the tour we started working with is using like max reliable LFOs to control instruments on stage and things like that. So we're doing like virtual side chaining and different like LFO parameters to filter cutoffs and like volumes and things like that. So we're doing things that you would normally just do in the studio, but it's actually going out to stage and it's happening live. So I see there's a lot of potential to do more of that in the future. Because like, as is, we're sending MIDI patch changes out to all the instruments on stage, so they're always on the right sound for when they want to play. We were like, oh, we're already sending MIDI out. Like, what if we get into control as well? And it's gotten pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I feel like I'm somewhat removed a little bit from that world, but it is really fascinating to me. Even just from like, hey, we've got all these backing tracks and we want to sidechain a live kick to a bass. How we do that with the least amount of latency. Sure, that kind of stuff.
Sure, front of house has the ability to do that as well, but sometimes it makes sense for things that are meant to be very tight or sound a lot like the record. Like, we will literally just do continuous controller automation in lanes that are dedicated to do like sidechaining and things like that.
But if it was like a live kick, that's already programmed. So that if it was a live instrument that was sidechaining, it has to be performed properly in order to do so. So you just have to play those exact hits.
Yep.
Damn. Sounds like a lot of work for the drummer to bring my therapist.
It is. He's also like big up to James Hunt. It's a machine. Yeah. Like, between playing electronics on stage, he's playing a Prophet 6, an electron analog rhythm, a bunch of pedals, an SPV SX, and an acoustic. What's that? Is this Derek? No, this is Rüfüs. This is Rüfüs. He's just handling so much stuff. And then when we get into programming mode, he's just like so locked in. Like, I mean, because the songs are all things that he was involved in writing. So when I'm in the playback and I'm like, I'm not sure what you want to try to get here, he'll just hop up and be like, click, boom, 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 done. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
So when you have somebody like Rüfüs or an artist or duo or band come to you and say, hey, we had this vision, do you have kind of like a format or a template of how you lay out step by step how you're going to help them program their show?
I tend to be flexible because I've never worked with an artist where I'm building a whole new system from them from scratch. Like Rüfüs was already touring in a certain way and they were comfortable doing it. So I kind of came in and learned their ecosystem and how they work. And then the next iteration of it, I was like, have a suggestion. Like, what if we do it this way? And then the next iteration, we try to just tighten it up. Because when I came in, they had a show file that was like 10 years old, but they had just been adding to. And at a certain point, I was like, let's pare this down, and get this into something that's like more portable and manageable in terms of like cloud storage and moving over your redundant computers and all that stuff. Cause, you want to keep a show file somewhat nimble.
Yeah. So the band Perry I got called to do playback for, and they were using the Ableton Live 8. It was probably 2018, and they were using Ableton Live 8 and the oldest MacBook Pro I've ever seen in my life. It was like just the phase right after the white shell.
Okay.
And it was like,
Yep.
And it was crazy. I think Ableton Live 8 was actually newer than the computer model. They were using like really super old interfaces and never used before. It was a kind of a huge nightmare. Just being able to have a rig given to you like that and then just be like, oh, I got to figure this thing out. Right? It's this ancient, like prehistoric.
Well, I'm a little superstitious. Like I was using 2015 Macs up until this year. And I was running Ableton 10 because that was rock solid.
Yeah.
And I just stayed in that ecosystem as long as I could. And eventually we did some edits and I was like, oh, well, I can't use 10 anymore. So it's time to update the whole thing. But, for the longest time, it was like motion interfaces and a radial switcher. And that was the thing. And then we moved on to like the play audio interfaces and then, different things. And now we need a higher track count in different digital formats. So we've done pretty like involved thing. It's no longer like a little 4-space rack. I've got 32 rack spaces and a big desk, flip top lid.
You want to pull it up? I could pull it up real fast. Yeah, this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to walk us through this?
Yeah, sure. So on the left side of the rack, you've got two RME MADI faces that are connected via USB-C to the two computers. Below that are a pair of OWC docks that are rack mounted to a tray. And then beneath that, you've got a direct out Andiamo, which acts as a MADI switcher. So either one of those machines can be running live at a time and I can switch between them with no dropouts or clicks or anything like that.
Yeah, and the way that works, right, is if there's just a signal or a tone that cuts, it immediately just switches.
Just build a simple max patch that just sends us a 1K sine tone down the channel.
Yep.
And if it drops, it just switches over to the other.
Nice.
But that gets us analog out, which you don't see. It's all D-subs on the back, and then it also converts to Dante, which we use for, I have recordings of the band playing the show on channels that are all muted. And they go to like a B layer on the audio console. So if, for example, an instrument goes down on stage, which it has before, rather than like scrambling to run up there, we can switch to the playback of it.
That's nice.
And then when the time is right, we can swap out the instrument and get it back. So like the idea is to have like no show stop ever, and we've, knock on wood, we've never had to go to that.
That's good.
So it's good to have in place, and having the Dante network in place. You can see the center screen there. That's my personal USB screen that I use on the Mac Studios. It's tucked back behind there. And that's what I use for recording the show.
Okay.
So I have a feed that comes back from the direct outs of the front of house console. They come back to me so I can track the band performing.
Nice.
And using set lists in the same controller, I've just done some MIDI things to where I'm just using one controller to run the whole thing. Like one button's record on or record on arm, all channels, and then I'm using start and stop with, little Ableton controller.
Okay.
And it's just record enabled. So one design will do over here. The words the left, like just the black and the black one there that has like the backlit buttons.
This guy.
Yep.
Yeah. Jeff Keeler. Shout out to Jeff. He makes Ableton stuff.
But yeah,
stuff's great. He's awesome.
I was using Akai controllers forever, and I've had a couple scenarios where I had some like double triggers, and I was like, I need to find a new solution. Unfortunately, it was like nothing crazy had happened, but it was like, I hit next song and it would jump down to 2 songs. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I trust this. I'm always loads of vibration on stage. Like there's a lot of strengths to that box there, but one of the cool things is if you double trigger, it nulls out the second one.
That's smart. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he made that specifically for this purpose.
For sure.
So yeah, Oaktone makes cool stuff. Also, have you played with Taz? His like arrangement view, flexible kind of thing. It's like an alternative to
Yes, I mean, there's Taz out there and there's AbleSet as well. There's some cool tools out there now that do like kind of set list management. I've stuck with the one that I know because I've used it for so long.
Yeah, I have Setlist, like an older version, and it works great. I played with Taz. Taz is awesome too if you want to jump around in arrangement view.
I bought it, but I haven't really explored it too much, and I'm already kind of comfortable in the ecosystem as in, so I'll just stick with it.
Makes sense, usually,
Yep. So on the other side, there's a Arturia controller, and I use just a few buttons there. One is because of the way this is set up, if I lose my A computer and I have to switch to the B, I have to enable all of the MIDI outputs on the B computer. So it's like one button is mapped to all of the MIDI channels on both, and one's just in the state of on or off. So it just toggles between like which computer is sending MIDI note information, clock data, CCs, all that stuff out to stage.
Gotcha.
And then the other is a record arm all for the record computer. So I just hit one button and it
All for each, you just record the whole set of the playing. Yeah. That's cool. Is this box right here, is that for in-ears?
No, I actually didn't have a MIDI interface for my computer specifically, so that Mo2 is there just to get MIDI out of the iConnect, which is just below it, so that the Overtone controller is split and going to 3 ways.
The iConnect Mio.
Yep.
I love that. I have this in my studio. It's a great MIDI interface.
They're fantastic. Our drum tech is also really strong MIDI guy, and he built our RGP network out. So it's like we just run Cat5 cables out of the back of our network switch out to the 3 risers on stage, and they all get the information they need. And it's just like one cable for each link.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it makes it easy for sure. Yep. You can really customize. The interface is pretty easy to use too, as far as the app that comes with it.
Yep. The Oracle software that they came up with is really good because the prior editor was super cryptic. It was the kind of thing that like in a rehearsal, you would go through and set it up and save it and hope that you didn't have to touch it again. Because the next time you opened it, you're like, I don't even remember I did.
That's the worst feeling. Yep. And below those Mio interfaces, what do we have here?
That is a timecode distributalizer. So what it does is it reshapes timecode and it distributes it to several different sources. So that is running out to front of house. Our front of house console and our lighting console both receive timecode for certain cues. So they change and they all follow in lockstep. And we send it over to monitors as well for the same reason.
So maybe for people who don't really understand time code, can you maybe break that down a little bit more for why that's necessary?
Well, it's an old format for keeping camera systems and audio systems in sync with one another. So it's a tone that goes out that everything just follows along with. So if it's like, if you're running MIDI clock and you have like 3 drum machines, it would be a timing reference for each one of those drum machines. It's the same kind of thing. So events on the timeline all happen at the same time is really what we're looking for. It's a really terrible sound if you really listen to it. It is. It's horrible. It's like a dial-up modem.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of network switches, which are dumb switches. Yeah, it's like the one on the bottom there is for our Dante network, and the one on the left underneath allows me to connect my computer to the Andiamo I/O. And then also I use the LAN outputs to connect to the iConnect interfaces.
Awesome. Are there any stories, maybe using the setup or another setup on stage, where things did not go as planned, and maybe how did you like overcome that situation?
Yeah, I had a really scary crash, not necessarily a crash, but just a failure early on. I was working with an artist called Mike Posner, and we had a setup where it was 2 Firewire Mo2 ultralights connected via hub, and we were using an aggregate device to connect them so that it was 16 outputs instead of 8. And the way that you boot them up is super important, so that 1 through 8 is 1 through 8 versus 9 through 16. So we had a stage where we lost power. We rolled the riser out. I plugged in, and we didn't have a full line check. So I hit go, and 9 through 16 was coming out of 1 through 8. So the first thing you hear is the click track. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just like hit stop. It's like, and it was literally just a moment of like, in my in-ears, the production manager and the front of house guy were the same guy. He's just like, take your time, make sure it's right. We're going to do this all over again. Fortunately, it was like a corporate event, and it wasn't like a festival or a headline show or anything like that. So there were people who were like talking heads that came out and were like, oh, we're just going to discuss this Nike product, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's good. And then, we were able to kind of go from there. But it was definitely one of those moments where it's like, check all your boxes. You ensure everything is good. And like, don't back down if somebody's like, no, you aren't able to, you don't have constant power, which was the issue there. They're like, oh, we'll do this. We can't have power the whole time. So instead I just learned, I'm like, no, yeah, I have to do things this way.
All right. So, real quick, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I love Magic Mind and I'm obsessed, and everybody I've shared it with on the podcast loves it too. I've been trying their new all natural drink shots called Free and Max. Max is awesome when I need to focus real hard on those long studio days or mixing sessions, working on projects, trying to knock stuff out. Free is perfect for just chill edits or when I want clarity and focus, maybe in the evening without the caffeine jitters. Sometimes I'll even drink it after coffee, but the best part is there's no crash, just steady energy that you want and your body needs. There's many health benefits including enhanced focus, mental clarity from nootropics, it reduces stress and anxiety, helps you relax while staying awake and aware, thanks to adaptogens like ashwagandha and other powerful ingredients. If you haven't tried it, check it out for yourself. Save that money so you can buy more MIDI controllers or plugins or whatever. Check out the link in the description and use the code Ableton Podcast 50. That's Ableton Podcast 50 in capital letters. Save that money for 50% off. Check out the link in the show notes. Once again, check out Magic Mind for yourself. They've been good to me in the podcast, so give them some love. You also serve as a studio engineer for Rüfüs. You've worked with them and the band's home studio space. What are some like unique technical considerations when setting up maybe their personal space or even your own space at home?
Well, one of the goals that we had when all three of the guys had a studio in Hollywood together, and when the two fellas decided to move to Miami, they still wanted the ability to be able to work together. So, one, they would set up these writing trips. Like they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do like 3 weeks in Austin." So I set up their set of gear that would go to all of those studios. So it was the same laptop, and we would tie into the studio with a UAD interface, and we would bring in bare instruments. So 2 days prior to every studio session, I would go in and set up all their backline and set everything up so it interfaces with whatever studio. So we did Austin, we did Hollywood, we did a studio in Ibiza, we just did a number of things, and it was like always like our tour manager would make sure the gear got there. I would show up, talk to the local techs, and we would just like get cracking on getting everything. So when the guys walked in, the workflow felt the same regardless. So that was like a consideration. And then in building their home studios, it was really important that we built a template and a system via Dropbox so that the guys could collaborate together as easily as possible. So there's like, if you collaborate with somebody in a studio session, you don't want to spend time trying to figure out what they've done and where things are and how they're routed.
Right.
So we tried to create some like continuity between the two studios there, because the two guys in Miami shared one studio, and then Tyrone had the one at his home. So it was important that we were able to like get the guys able to send files back and forth so that they could continue to work when they weren't all in the same room. So it was like templating and then like making sure that like tracks were arranged the same way and that like there was a consistency amongst at least the core plugins that they wanted to use. Like Arturia Bundle was like definitely something they wanted in Sound Toys and Valhalla. So like there's a lot of common tools, and then James gets into some like granular synthesis and like a little more esoteric things that he kind of had in his own world that we would just print the audio for so that it landed on channels. But it was like he had his own station and John had his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was connected all together. As far as your own personal studio, like what are some of your favorite pieces of gear?
I'm a really big fan of the Dave Smith Prophet 8.
Oh yeah.
I've had one for quite some time, and that was like a pretty big voice on the record that you mentioned before, Mechanics of Time Travel. Big access virus user. And for that record, I was using Sub 37 pretty heavily, but I since sold it because it funded more modular gear.
Yeah. The Prophet 8 is beautiful. That's a sexy synth right there.
Yeah, I've got the tabletop version of it just due to space restraints. But it sounds great. Yeah, 3 envelopes, a bunch of modulations, sources, and destinations. There's a lot under the hood than just kind of like a 1 knob percent kind of thing. If you're like me, you like that kind of.
For sure. How many oscillators do you own, sir?
I'll have 8, so like 1 per voice. 8 oscillators. That's unless it's a 16 voice.
Okay. What was the other one you mentioned?
Oh, Access Virus.
I've heard of it.
Okay. It's like a 90s a desktop one right there. I've since sold that as well because like my role has become so modular, but I was using that pretty heavily. And I got hip to that from Scott from Tycho. Like he used it pretty heavily through his early records. Okay, I really like that sound. So I found one that was in a little bit of disrepair, got it for cheap and made the fixes.
Yeah, that thing's cool. I've heard of this.
It was really it was a popular synth in like Nero drum and bass in like the early 2000s. So a lot of those like really pre-serum kind of like wonky basses and crazy stuff like came from access bars.
Yeah. What else? What other gear you love? You said you sold your Sub 37. That's my baby at home. I love that thing.
Yeah, I got it. I loved it, and I just found that like after I finished the record that I was not using it to what I thought it was its full potential, and I had plenty of horsepower in the modular to do similar stuff. So it's the way to go.
Yeah.
I miss it every once in a while. I'll see one used. I'm like, do I get another one? But I have a bit of a one in, one out policy for gear right now because I've got more gear than space.
That's fair. Yeah, that makes sense. At some point, it becomes an issue.
Yep.
Unless you have fat budget. No.
And then also like the Korg MS-20 Mini. I will never sell that thing.
Check that out.
It's like the sound of air and the sound of like Aphex, certain Aphex Twin tunes.
Very nice.
The Royce Up guys use it quite a bit. So it's just like a very familiar sound, and like it's a go-to. Oh, you have one on stage with Rüfüs as well. This is cool. I like your patch. Yeah, it's like semi-modular, so it's a full there's a fully set path that you can break the pathways with the patch panels and do interesting things with it.
If you could only pick one scent, what would it be?
That's hard.
I know. It's a hard one.
One synth. It would probably have to be polyphonic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe that Prophet 8.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, out of the things that I own, like I would really like a Prophet 6. But no, it's got a different character to it because it's fully analog and not digitally controlled. So maybe that would be the way to go.
I use the Arturia version of the Prophet 6.
Yeah.
Save space. They're at my desk.
Their stuff is so incredible.
It's pretty good.
I was a big Native Instruments guy, like would buy complete every year. And then at one point I just like thought, try out this Arturia thing, was using Native Instruments less and less.
Yeah, Native Instruments, I feel like they had an amazing run and they still make some cool libraries of sounds and instruments, but like using Contact is such a pain in the butt. It's like,
yeah, then you broke it.
It's completely broken from the inside out, and I don't think they've really truly made any significant updates to it.
No, it's unfortunate. Like there's a lot of tools in Contact that I really enjoyed, and I've just fussed by going to sessions and being like, I don't even know how to get this to work.
Yeah,
it's problematic, and like consistency is key, especially if you work on client sessions.
Oh yeah,
send away a session to a client, they do some work on it, send it back, and then nothing works, and you got to spend part of the day just trying to recover the work. Is like not very efficient. So
it's rough.
Yeah, it's definitely rough for sure. I'm all about printing as much audio as possible and as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's one reason. I mean, as far as speaking of like inconsistent plugins, and especially as far as live performance, if it's not going to be stable, like that's a really issue too. Yeah, And Toby Hunka, shout out to Toby. He and I worked on this thing called Resampler Pro that basically automates the sample creation process.
Okay.
So if you want to make a sample pack from like a plugin or whatever, or even like hardware, you can sample your hardware and sample every individual note and automate that process.
This is cool to have inside of Ableton. I use MainStage's auto sampler.
Yep.
To do the same thing. And then I was just
kind of idea.
Yep. The nice thing is like it may not be the case anymore, but for the longest you could take an auto sampler, preset it, and drop it into Ableton Sampler into a key map properly. So it was like a nice little life hack. So I could go like, I've got this keyboard that I've only got for 2 weeks. I'm going to get whatever patches I want off of it. That's cool. Then chuck them into Ableton Sampler. And with like it's like less headaches, but you still have to format some things.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of the work for you because auto sampler has the key map written into the metadata. So when you drag and drop, it just lands on the right key. That is the right zone.
Yeah, we actually have something. There's like 2 MaxFly devices, one that does that.
Okay.
And then the other one is just the actual recording process of like, you basically create a note in every single scene in Ableton, top to bottom. And then you just load this other device and it'll actually trim everything perfectly as far as like starting and stopping at the right spot, and then naming convention as well. And then if you drag that into Sampler, it'll basically put in order.
Cool. This is like Ableton 11 hub or kind of thing, or is this 12 only?
It's 11 and up.
Okay.
So I'll definitely check it out. 11 suite or up. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, if you want to check it out.
We'd love to.
Shout out to Toby, abletondrummer.com is his site. And
I've talked with him about trying to build some custom things. Like he's awesome. We were trying to solve some problems in Prelight set. I was trying to build an arrangement view kind of setup. He's got a multiple looper thing.
Yeah.
And we were trying to make it so that he could launch scenes, so Derek could launch scenes on the timeline that felt the same as launching scenes in session view. And between talking to him and using his multiple looper device, we came up with a solution that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he has his arrangement looper device.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, because like Derek had tunes that like weren't like ready to be stemmed out and set up for session view that he still wanted to be able to play live and like kind of not demo things, but things that just weren't fully developed yet. And it was really easy for us to build a setup so that he could just play on another computer his arrangement view things and still jam and keep it loose the way the Pretty Light Show works.
That's a tricky balance of like, how do you improvise in Ableton with all these other live instruments and modular keyboards and everything syncing perfectly?
He calls the show. Like if you see his show, like he's got his mic that he talks to the audience with, and he's got his band mic.
Yeah.
And he's like, no drums, 1, 2, he's like conducting the thing. He's like, all right, we're going to go to modular land, so I need everybody to lay back. So he's definitely running the show, and he's conducting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about that is his show does not rely on time code. So like all the video and lighting is done by people's hands. So he doesn't have to rely on everything being so tightly programmed. Like Rüfüs wants a really dialed, like laser pointed show. So everything follows that time code, and any changes are discussed with all departments. It's not like one night we go, okay, we're going to add 16 bars here.
Yeah.
It's like, no, during rehearsals, we have to program it. So we have an option to do, the 90-minute version, the 70-minute version, or here's a guest that comes in and that kind of thing.
Are they using something like ShowSync for that, or?
No, I'm just running time code up.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because isn't that the Pine? I'm drawing a blank.
Pull show control.
Show control.
Yeah, and that's for using CDJs and time code.
Race.
First time I had to mess around with that was with Breaks Up, because I had gone out to do some work. I knew their tour manager, and I thought I was doing a playback thing, but it turns out they had 4 CDJs on stage, and there were Ableton rigs, but they were kind of like extra sauce, like a key setup and a little drum setup.
Yeah.
So I had to learn show control real quick, but it's a really cool idea.
I've heard it's pretty simple once you get into it.
Yeah, it's just you just need to have somebody around. Usually it's an LD, but I was off stage just ensuring that the right songs were queued up, because like in that bottom window you can see what each CDJ has queued up. And so you're just like waiting for them to make a transition for you to press which bit of time code is going to be launched at a certain time.
Yeah, that's the interesting balance. Like, have you found anything that's like fairly somewhat easy plug and play as far as syncing MIDI and like an Ableton Link kind of scenario between CDJs and running Ableton?
I've not.
Okay.
I've not, but I haven't had the need to explore it.
Yeah.
Like I do a little bit of DJing just for fun, and I've never had to have like a sync, scenario.
Because I know if you plug in your laptop to record box running with the CDJ, you can link.
Okay.
You can Ableton Link.
I've just always used record box stick.
Right.
Be right back.
Then that's what I'm thinking. I was like, man, somebody could just create something that would easily integrate the two. Sure, it's like plug it in, Ethernet cable straight into your laptop, and just have them think that way. So that'd be the dream. That'd be so nice.
For sure. The other thing is like, for smaller artists, having a video show, so it's like having your session run, but also sending MIDI out to Resolume. Yeah. Like that can be set up.
Oh, it's easy.
But it takes a lot of forethought for it to be kind of like automated. If you're launching scenes, you want certain events to happen at the same time, always.
I did that for a couple of my shows. I did a couple shows like that in Indianapolis. My friend Ben Spilker, shout out to Ben. He was the first guest on the podcast. We did something similar at Resolume. We ran OSC over a network.
Yep.
We've been able to Andrew's Mashglow, plus it does that free. Works really well. Free stable. So yeah, this is fun stuff, man. Back to like the whole studio side of things. You have any favorite Ableton Live stock devices or tools you can't live without? Maybe for production and for live performance.
For production, Ableton's CV toolkit is huge because I'm such a modular centric person. Like it's synchronization of modular with Ableton that's tighter than MIDI, and it's so good.
I haven't used CV tools, but everybody I know who's into modular raves about how they use it.
It's cool because it's just translating MIDI data to CV. Any of the tools that you have that you already like your expression control, randomization, all that stuff can all of a sudden hit your hardware.
Yeah.
So it's like I'll develop things using sampler because I use there's a lot of samplers in my modular. Like that's my kind of my jam. So I will develop concepts using simpler and using sampler. Like, oh, this scheme of control is really good. Then I'll take that scheme out of the rack and apply it to CV tools, and all of a sudden I can control my physical devices the exact same way. It's awesome. It's super cool.
Definitely saves time.
Yeah.
Makes it easy.
Well, because working with modular is very exploratory and it can be very slow.
Yeah.
And if you know Ableton, you know your way around, you're like, I've got this idea I want to come up with. It would be faster to prototype it in the box before I spend a couple hours patching it up and having it not work exactly the way you want.
Yeah.
You know? And it's very like, there's a handshake there because like things that I learned in the physical modular world, I find ways in Ableton to do in the box as well.
Yeah.
So it's like they kind of inform one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that excites me the most about modular is it's like a lot of happy accidents. Like you just don't know sometimes what you're going to get. All of that is all, and that's just half the fun.
Yeah, so much of my patches and things, I'm not the guy that sits down at a modular and performs a whole song. Like I know a lot of dudes that do, and I really respect that. It's wild. But I approach it with a producer's mind. I'm like capturing sounds and capturing sequences and capturing things, and I'm going to be compiling into like a full production.
Do you use like a lot of take lanes just to like record loops of stuff until you find what you want?
No, I say just record long on the timeline and then go through and chop stuff up. Take lanes would be smart, you know, but
There's a million ways to do it.
for sure.
Yeah. Man, yeah, there's a new feature which is nice in Ableton 12.2 coming out real soon. That just you can choose to the unused take lanes.
It may be an Ableton drummer thing, but there's a device that you insert onto a channel, and any deactivated clips you have in a session, it scrubs from your session.
Really?
To help like
Track or just the clips or
like if you're in either way, like if you're in arrangement view and you've got a whole bunch of grayed out clips, it'll remove them from your audio pool so that you pare down your session to be portable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super nice.
Super good. It may be Ableton drummer, or there's another fellow that does some really cool Max for Live stuff that he's distributing through Isotonic as well.
Okay. Yeah, Darren Cowley runs Isotonic, but he works with a ton of really brilliant developers.
I think he's distributing doing Bastion stuff as well, which is really on another level, next level.
He really is.
It's insane. If I weren't so ADHD, I try to build my own Max devices. But what happens is I go to Google and I search for a tool, and 99% of the time there's somebody's made it.
That's how I feel too, man. Like I had to learn a little bit of Max to get certified. I don't have any desire to reinvent the wheel. You know, there's a lot of people out there who could develop it way better than I can. And by the time I learn it, you get really good at it. I could have just used another tool probably.
Yep. I've got 2 books sitting on my coffee table that are about designing Max patches. And every time I get a couple chapters in, I'm like, you know what? Somebody's made it already.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of that. And maxforlive.com, for you go listening, if you don't know, there's a bunch of free stuff on there. That's really cool. It's already made. You can just go for sure.
Real quality stuff.
You mentioned Dylan Bastion, his pack, Inspired by Nature.
Oh, that's one of the ones that Ableton distributes, right?
Yeah. I think that came out in Lemon Sweet.
Okay. Yep.
That one was really fun. So many happy accidents. For sure. You can get some really cool stuff.
It's funny because I've got 2 different modes of working. Like I'll work in a very focused composer-y kind of way where I'm like playing keys and I'm playing guitar and I'm playing bass and all that. And then there's times where I just want the tools to like start generating things and get inspired by that. So there's like definitely 2 different approaches. And like my work prior to Mechanics of Time Travel relied a lot on like heavy sound design and kind of crazy like IDM glitch stuff. And then it was like during the pandemic that I decided to write a record that was like melodic in nature.
Yeah.
And I found myself like just recording my Moog. I wasn't like recording MIDI. I wasn't doing anything. I was like playing instruments and recording them in. It just felt very organic and kind of natural. Like I decided like the virus was going to be this type of melody. The MS-20 was going to be effects. Pads were going to come from this. So I decided what the players were in my band. And I just wrote in that kind of like mindset.
That's a great way to have a really consistent sound too for an album theme.
That was the idea. It was like
palette of sounds.
Yeah. And I'm using a lot of the same like channel strips and UAD and things like that to try to create like a console kind of sound. It's not like there's a SSL bus compressor here and an API there and this and the pull text here. It's like I just decided to like limit the tools to where I'm just like have what I need to get the job done. Otherwise, boom, never finish.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we were talking through Instagram. You mentioned Space Blender by Soundtoys, their new plugin.
That's not really so good.
I love that thing. That's so good.
Like I come from not only like industrial music, but also like shoegaze stuff. So I'm a big reverbs and delays kind of guy. So I'll pick up anything. And when they announced that was free, because I saw it at like NAMM, there was somebody who was like doing demos of it, and I was like, that sounds really cool. And then I got an email saying that it's free. I was like, you link,
Yeah,
it's super good.
that's awesome. So if you had to pick like some of your favorite Ableton Live stock devices, let's go back to that question. What would you pick?
Echo is huge.
Yes.
Like it's a fantastic delay.
Yes.
Like I rely on Soundtoys Echo Boy a lot. And when the Ableton Echo device came out, I didn't open up that other one for a while.
Yeah.
You know, because it's got the noise on board, and it'll also do like the ducking, and it does a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, the ducking is a sick feature I feel like a lot of people don't even know about.
For sure. It's like a little
Inside the character.
Yep.
Just turn that on. I do that on vocals a lot too to keep like the warmth and up close, and then there's like a tail.
And the tail
happens later after it stops playing.
Yeah. Also the convolution reverb I really like, because I do have a bunch of IRs from different companies. You know, like there's a bunch of 80s reverbs that I really liked that I would never be able to afford. So I just have a convolution reverb impulse of like an AMS reverb that sounds like, you know, the Prince drum verb, or, you know, whatever it happened to be.
Do you put a hybrid reverb much?
Yeah, that's actually the one I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, so you can do that in there too.
Yeah.
It's got the convolution here. Yeah, this thing's really sick.
It sounds really nice. I'm really into a shimmer verb too for all the ambient stuff, and it's kind of on board.
Yeah, shimmer's great.
Also the multi-band dynamic tool is fantastic for not only like fixing things, but also it's just a great sound design tool. Yeah, doing like the OTT type thing with it, like just do wild stuff out of it.
I mean, you know, it's a good preset of a device when you have companies making plugins specific for
Yes, these do the like here's OTT, and nobody's doing one hit a good for sure. Every sure is trying to do that. Yep.
Yeah.
But I also like Corpus, and I like a lot of the little Max drum synths. Like I'm big on drum synthesis. I mean, I do a lot of found sounds, and I'll layer acoustic drums with it and things, but like, yeah, the FM synthesis drum is really good. And then Operator, I basically couldn't live without.
Have you played with the new drum synths?
Oh, it's the new drum sampler.
Sampler, thank you.
That thing is sick. That thing is great.
The drum sampler is
Yep.
really dope.
Yeah, I immediately built a rack that just had 32 of those in it, so that I could use it into a standard drum rack.
Yes.
Yeah, some of the time stretching things, when you automate those, you get really interesting stuff out of. Like expression control is huge for me, because in like modular land, triggered sample and holds are how you create movement and modulation. So to have a device that I can just chuck onto a channel and be like, okay, all these lanes are going to be random. I'm going to set them to different devices or to different params, and things are just going to get wild, you know?
Yeah, this thing is really cool. Like, Sidebrain, I don't know if you know who that is, on Instagram. He has a video he made recently that was really insane about using this for like taking this loop function and doing some like drum breaks with it.
Okay.
Making some really quick drum breaks, messing around with these. But these effects are so sick. Yeah, and they're just like built simple. You just got two knobs and you can affect stuff really fast.
Yeah, they're strong enough that I wish they made individual devices of you.
Yeah.
You know, like I would like to be able to chain those.
Yeah. Chain them how?
Like, well, having like, if I had that pitch, not necessarily pitch envelope, but some of the other effects available as individual effects that I can lay a place afterwards. Because like the ring mod is really cool, and that like the loop and stretch, like if I could do a ring mod, loop and stretch all in one go.
Well, these are already pulling from other audio effects though. I think they just probably recoded them into this device.
All right, well, maybe it's just the two knob format that makes it really intuitive, you know?
Yeah. Because I mean, with the 8-bit, you could use like
Redux, yeah, sure.
Yep, for sure. Punch,
Probably drum bus or something else.
so I'm thinking the ring mod, you could use shifter.
The stretch and the loop, though, maybe in ones, because that's where things get like, that's true, really interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. With Simpler, when they added warp modes, that was a huge game changer.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, oh, I have all the things that I always wanted to be able to do with clips.
Yes.
Now in a playable format.
Yes. Yeah, Simpler is awesome. It's really powerful.
It's funny they call it Simpler because it does a lot of high level things.
It does. Yeah, for sure. And I love just being able to like chop up different, like take a full loop and just immediately throw a sample into it and then use the slice function.
Yep.
That's huge. You could do a lot of stuff and arpeggiate the slice function. Sure, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun with melodic content. You kind of do that like bonobo chop melodic thing
Yeah.
really well. Super cool. The arpeggiator has gotten like over the top.
It's so much better now. And I like the visualization too. Yeah, it's single steps. That's pretty awesome. I was going to ask you, as a gateway drug for people who are getting into modular synth, what would be your pick for somebody saying, I want to get into it? Like myself, I'm not a modular head by any means, but I think it's fun if I wanted to start with the basic setup to be able to use with Ableton Live. What would you recommend?
I'd recommend DCD Rack,
Okay.
which is software.
Right.
And what they've done is a lot of the manufacturers have created soft versions of their modules. So you have the ability to really explore with the actual devices before you decide that, what's the entry point for a modular synth. Could be $1,000, could be $1,500, but it allows you to like explore a lot before you start buying. Because a lot of what I find is people think they've got this idea, they want to use a modular synth, but they don't really know what they're doing. So they kind of like keep accruing stuff. And then it's like, we'll have got all these disparate parts versus having a concept and working towards that.
That makes a lot of sense.
But VC Rack is great. There's a free version. But if you decide that VC Rack is cool, you can buy it and use it as a plugin within Ableton Live.
Right. Is it a subscription thing or is it a one-time buy?
It's a one-time buy, but there are add-on packs. So within the library, you can download loads and loads of, like the device in the center there's hardware of that as well.
Yeah.
And like this Wasp filter, like those exist in real life, but you've got soft versions of them. So you can prototype a system. If you're trying to learn modular synthesis, there's all the tools there to begin with. But if you're looking to start a system in the physical realm, you can download versions of those modules and really prototype what you want to do before you charge, $300 a year for you.
That makes that much sense too, because it's easy to go full send on something expensive and just keep adding to it because you think you don't really know how to use it.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's good advice.
My strongest advice would be like, have an idea of what you want it to be before you start just like investing, because the sky's the limit. It's like, I can always just get another enclosure and fill that up, and before long you're like, you've got a rig like Derek's.
You're liquidating your retirement plan.
Exactly. What's the retirement plan? Or you're in the music industry.
Yeah, you'll be happy though. You'll be broke and happy. That's all that matters. So I want to be able to wrap things up. We've been going at it for a little while. Maybe talk a little bit about your process in producing your album, the mechanics of time travel. Like I said, it definitely had some of a Taiko influence to it. I can hear it. It was just like really a vibe, man. Really enjoyed it. What was that process like, making that album with Young Heavy Souls? And were you guys collaborating in person? Was it remote?
No, I mean, I did all of it myself with the exception of the mastering. Our front of house engineer on Rüfüs Du Sol, his name is Cam Truen. He's a legend, and he does amazing mixes. I had him do the mastering for it, but everything else was done in-house. And it was, I was on tour when COVID started to ramp up and we had our tour canceled. And I came home and I spent a while not doing anything. So I was like, okay, this is the time to like focus on a new project. And I like wanted to start something new, and I had like an aesthetic in mind, and that helps me like drive it. I'm a huge Boards of Canada fan, and that's where that came from. And then having worked with Scott for so long, just like the little things that you pick up with people along the way, like if I'm setting up his ring every day, I'm like, oh, this chord mini log through this Strymon pedal sounds really cool. Maybe I'll just kind of like rip that vibe, or like just things that have come up in conversation with he and I, because he's a big Access Virus user. And I was like, oh man, I want some of that sauce. So I ended up adding that. And I just, from mechanics, I had this like palette of instruments that I wanted to use to create a continuity and have like I said, this kind of band type of approach. So all the drums were in the box, and the rest of it was like me playing instruments. I tend to start ideas in session view, because when I first started using Ableton Live, there was no arrangement view. So it was like I was just kind of like looping parts and finding things that work together and just creating scenes that would be like, okay, let's make a good A section, let's make a good B section, let's figure out how to get from point A to point B kind of thing. And it was just came together really organically. And because of the amount of programming that I do in my Ableton editing programming, I do in my job, I just wanted to write something that was very musician friendly. So just like, okay, I'm going to start this with a loop of guitar, and I'm going to play some bass over it, and here's a synth. And before long, I'm like, now I can move through arrangement view and figure out like what the full structure of the tune's going to be.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people just skip over session view because they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
It's just like this colorful Tetris thing.
It's fun for me because it feels like I can jam with myself. You know, I have enough inputs on my interface where it's like I don't have to go, okay, I'm going to play the Moog now. I'm going to find cables and do that. It's all set up and ready to go. I've got a template made where it's like I open it up. I've got one controller. It can be like, I'm going to play that synth here and do that diddle, you know, take no bound mover to this and, you know, do that. And the other thing with mechanics was like once I had a lot of the MIDI parts written, I would create the arrangement and then track the instrument through the duration of the song. So instead of using like audio loops of things that I've made, it was like a long thing. So I could sit there and like, while the bass is going, oh, at this moment, I really want the filter to open up a little bit. I'm going to drive it here. I'll open up the tail, the envelope, just so it felt more organic. And like what I was really shooting for is like a very analog and organic sound record.
Well, I think you achieved that because it sounds like both. So for sure, man. Sweet. Any upcoming projects that you want to shout out, whether it's personal or working with somebody else?
You know, I've on my third record with an industrial artist called Curse Mackey. I produce for and co-produce with, and he has got a new single coming out Friday.
Okay.
I just texted in the information. The record's coming out. Let's pull it up here.
On Instagram, or where can I go?
Yeah, if you look at Curse Mackey on Instagram, you will find him there. Our collaborative tune Vertigo Ego comes out Friday.
Oh,
and then the LP, because it's coming out on wax via Negative Game Productions, is happening July 25th.
sweet. I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, we've been working together for 8 years now. And this is our third record together, but I've known him for about 20 years. Okay. And if I'm home and he's in town, I'll come sit in on his shows. And I'll bring out like an MPC or like drum pads or Modular and just kind of like, we improvise some stuff. And I've had a handful of productions, so I know the songs well. So he's like, you know what to do. Just don't go overboard.
Nice.
It's a lot of fun. And then I go overboard and it's super fun.
Yeah, sometimes you got to full send it.
For sure. But aside from that, like, I think the follow-up to Mechanics of Time Travel will be written in fall when Rüfüs' schedule opens up quite a bit.
Okay. So there's going to be another part 2 coming.
Yeah. I'm looking to follow that up. I'm not sure what to do distribution-wise for it, but I'll deal with that once I have the material written.
Yeah. That sounds good, man. I look forward to hearing it.
Nice.
To wrap things up, if you had to ask some kind of nerdy question to my Ableton chatbot, Abe, like I said, I think I told you, he knows all of my favorite Macs for Live devices and plugins. He knows all the podcast episodes up to today and like a bunch of other different tutorials and stuff that I think's cool. But he also knows all the Ableton Live manuals.
Okay.
From 9 to 12.
All right. So can I ask Abe to suggest a Max for Live sequencer that is
Absolutely.
highly continuous controller driven?
Okay.
The modulation is my jam.
Give me a suggestion. That's a good question. For how did you wear that?
Max for Live sequencer, heavy on CC modulation.
Yeah, that's good. He usually does better when you're more specific. So let's see what he has to say about this.
Well, I like that.
The internet's been super slow out here. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Yeah, there's a suggestion was the Euclidean sequencer, actual device. It's a 4-voice sequencer. Creates polymeters and melodic arpeggios.
We use a lot of that in the modular world because it's like sequences that are not the same length. So that, like those polyrhythmic techno things,
Kind of getting you happy results. And you can have a fixed note per voice or create your own melodic sequence for each one.
So this is on your site?
This is on my site, liveproducersonline.com. I can send you a private link too if you want to play with it.
Yeah, cool. I'd love to take a peek.
And then note triggered modulator. A variable length parameter sequencer that advances one step each time it receives a MIDI note.
Yep.
Now CC hijack. I've heard of this. Converts one MIDI control change message to another, allowing continuous MIDI control change message to say mod wheel.
You can do a lot of that within the Neo itself. But and you can do remapping and filtering and all sorts of things. So I haven't gone that tables. It will mess around with, when you have a huge amount of stuff on stage, it's important. Like, oh, maybe this device doesn't need MIDI clock.
Sick, man.
Cool. Well, I look forward to getting into that, man.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Thanks again for joining the podcast. It's good to,
of course.
And everybody go check out, where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to follow you online?
Oh, Instagram. Yeah, it's just Chase Dobson.
Chase Dobson. Yeah, I'll include the link in the show notes. That'd be
Cool. Appreciate it.
So yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
Sweet. All right. Bye, everybody. Peace. Hey,
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Do me a huge favor if you would and hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you don't hate the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. It would help me out a ton. Don't forget to check back on Tuesdays for new episodes. If you want to be the first to get new episodes and stay updated and get free new devices and sample packs and other stuff that I'll be sending out in the future, join the newsletter. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter and or check out the links in the show notes. Make sure to give this guest a follow on the socials, give them some love for spending their time. And once again, thanks for listening to the podcast. I will see you next time. Later.